Hearing that name, her face slightly faltered, and she fell silent, unable to speak. Jung Woo's diary contains detailed information about everything he had gone through. But there's still a part I cannot understand, which is why Jung Woo had to be betrayed. After all, no matter how concerned people were once his power matched that of Nine King, Artia shouldn't be a place that can collapse so easily. Above all, I can't understand why Nine King, who usually fight among themselves, would unite to oppose Jung Woo. There must be something I don't know. Tell me, why did Nine King go so far as to try to kill Jung Woo? She gritted her teeth. If I tell you, would you kill me? Ismenias closed his eyes, biting his lip in restraint, finally agreeing to speak. It's because of the Soul Stone. Upon hearing this, his gaze became filled with suspicion. The Soul Stone. She frowned, as if recalling something. Heaven Wing. There's the Soul Stone of Lucille, more widely known by the name of the one who brings the light, Lucifer. Though he was a transcendent being, he couldn't join any faction, whether divine or demonic, light or darkness. He simply wandered aimlessly. 1,000 years ago, his wings were torn apart by gods and demons, and he fell. He frowned as if he had understood. So it was Dube agreed, because if anyone possesses Lucille's Soul Stone, that person could surpass the level of an ordinary player, even becoming a transcendent. He clenched his palm slightly. But why didn't Jung Woo mention this? Why? He asked, so where is the soul? She replied, I don't know. If I did, I would have already taken it. His expression darkened. No, you must know. A sharp, murderous glare radiated from his eyes. Hoin Woo threatened her. Even the smallest detail, you must figure it out, or else I'll never allow you to die peacefully, as you wish. She screamed in frustration. You never promised that. But he turned away abruptly. Hoin Woo walked off without a glance back, while she continued screaming madly. Father Hoin Woo, you bastard, are you really? He silently walked along the dark, desolate path when suddenly a voice caught his attention. Level 98 will be very chaotic. Brahm leaned against the door and said, why has the giant tribe, and even the dragon tribe, gone extinct? He was arranging things in the study, or rather, tidying up to make the already arranged items look neater. Brahm spoke up, clearing his throat. He looked at the group of goblins moving the furniture and said, I would truly be grateful if you could create a dungeon or a laboratory like this for me. Brahm pretended to cough, and then said, of course, not because I'm jealous of Boo. You've received quite a lot this time, haven't you? You'll need to do more experiments as well. I think it would be good for Sesha. Upon hearing this, he couldn't help but laugh. Brahm, somewhat embarrassed, spoke up louder. What I mean is, isn't it great? It's not that I'm being greedy, but I'm just trying to help you in the future. The power of the universe, world of endless night, had been granted to homunculus Brahm. Suddenly, a data panel appeared, surprising Brahm. He calmly said, I'll leave Intrinian to Boo, and in return, not having to clean up here would be more beneficial to me. It's nearly in ruins right now, but if done properly, I think it could become an even larger laboratory than Boo's. If Boo takes responsibility for external matters like mass production or strengthening the military forces, I can delegate internal tasks like creating barriers and illusions to Brahm to stabilize things from within. Hoin Woo looked at him and asked, what do you think, Brahm? Brahm hesitated and accepted. If you're so stubborn, I have no other choice. I'll take responsibility for that space and try to restore it, but it's not going to be easy. It will require quite a bit of material. Is that all right with you? The reason we allied with By the Table is because of this, after all. Brahm's expression suddenly became serious. Just as I thought, you're really planning to completely reveal your identity. He calmly replied, that's right. Brahm gently reminded him. It won't be easy. In the future, all eyes will be on you. He put his demon mask back on, and his eyes once again glowed in an unusual way. Coldly he said, it's fine. If they attack, just destroy all of them. In the warehouse, Hoin Woo silently watched Brahm. The man pondered for a long while. In his heart, Brahm was doubting life itself. He hadn't received any messages from the 98th floor yet. Are they on alert, or something? Is it because of the Soul Stone, or something like that? He quickly turned off the screen and asked Hoin Woo, so, is that the end of the story you were telling? He simply replied, yes. Brahm grinned maliciously. Well then, I guess it's time for the main event to begin. Hoin Woo nodded in agreement. The next moment, Hoin Woo summoned a burst of magic. Vira suddenly appeared within the magical mist. She instinctively looked around the room. Standing before Vieira, Huan-Wu removed his mask. Staring at her with icy, piercing eyes, Vira froze upon seeing his face. She screamed, "You!" Just as she was about to escape, the black aura formed spectral hands that tightly restrained her. Those ghostly hands seemed intent on tearing her apart. Huan-Wu looked at her with nothing but disgust and fury, unwilling to waste words on her. Instead, he turned away, signaling for Brahm to step forward. Brahm despised her just as much as he did. With a face as cold as ice, Brahm approached her. Ignoring her frantic screams, he spoke, "Vieira Dune." Thinking of his beloved daughter and granddaughter, his anger only intensified. Holding up a vial of purple liquid, he introduced it as Yongsan elixir. He had created it out of sheer curiosity, to see if a ghoul-like monster could actually be wounded. His gaze turned cruel as he wondered whether it would work on her body. Without hesitation, Brahm poured the entire vial over her, causing her to writhe in unbearable agony. After enduring multiple doses of the acid-like solution, Vira could no longer withstand the torment and begged for mercy. In excruciating pain, she pleaded, "I'll tell you everything. Please, stop." But Brahm's hatred ran too deep. He had no intention of sparing her. As he prepared to pour another vial, she shrieked, "Wait. I said I'll confess everything." Vieira revealed it all. The abduction of Ananta and the child was all to awaken their mother. The experiments were meant to complete a vessel for her. She couldn't find a way to save Ananta, but the child could. Hearing her words, Huan-Wu thought to himself, "Mother, as expected, the witches are trying to summon Mother Earth. The same mother they speak of. Mother Earth wasn't exactly a god, but rather an existence in the subconscious revered by the witches. Every time Mother Earth appeared to save the world, she used many different guises, making it difficult to discern her thoughts. Perhaps that's why she had so many names, but the most famous ones were Gaia and Yama. Vieira Dune was the only human being that Mother Earth took an interest in. She grew stronger and gained control over the witch's night. All of it was thanks to Mother's favor. Huan-Wu continued his thoughts, but one day, communication was suddenly cut off. Vira must have been deeply disappointed, and that was probably why she summoned Mother here. His thoughts kept flowing. He suspected that Luciel's soul stone, which Jung-Woo held, might have been stolen by someone very close to him. Vira exploded in anger and shouted, "I've told you everything. Why haven't you killed me yet?" She turned to Huan-Wu, calling out his brother's name desperately. She spoke in a weak, apologetic tone. Her words revealed that she and Jung-Woo were lovers. She shamelessly uttered repulsive things, recalling Jung-Woo's preferences when they were in love, wanting to relive old memories. She even claimed she would give up her title as a witch, and might even abandon Mother to remain loyal to herself, Jung-Woo and Sesha. He scoffed coldly. Jung-Woo? Seeing Vieira surrounded by dark arms, he felt a pang of sorrow as he spoke about his younger brother, whose love had clouded his judgment, waiting for her even until his last breath. Huan-Wu looked at her with hatred, saying, "How foolish was that boy?" Vieira looked at him as if waking up, vaguely realizing, "You're not Jung-Woo. You're the older brother he mentioned." He sneered, "How pitiful. Now you realize." He provoked her, comparing her to a dog, making her angrier than if she had eaten chili peppers. She shouted in fury, "And what about you? Do you know why I and my teammates turned our backs on him?" Seeing him silent, she felt triumphant, thinking she had struck a chord. Looking at Huan-Wu, she thought to herself that if she couldn't win him over with words, she still had one final card to play. Vieira shouted directly at his face, "Everyone around him has left. Isn't that because of him? Oh, right in your eyes. Your younger brother is always innocent and kind-hearted, right?" According to her, Jung-Woo was always a perfectionist, taking the lead in every battle, doing things his way from start to finish, both greedy and authoritarian. She laughed maniacally as if about to lose her sanity, saying, "He made all of us sick to the point of disgust." Huan-Wu remained silent, not bothering to respond. She looked at his face with satisfaction, thinking that this was enough to shake him. Now all she needed was for his guard to drop, even for a moment. But the reality was far from what she imagined. Huan-Wu was not easily swayed by such maddening words. He coldly asked, "Are you done talking?" He neither defended his younger brother nor agreed with her. He mocked the actions of those despicable creatures. After finishing his words, he cast his magic on her. Was it like burning her alive? Huan Wu spoke with hatred. So drop that disgusting disguise. Return to your true form, Viera. In the next moment, she revealed her true shape. She gradually faded into nothingness. However, her voice still echoed. You two brothers are always such a nuisance. Huan Wu suddenly realized. Mother Earth. He remembered the time when Yu was with Viera Dune. When they were lying on the same bed, both of them turned to face each other. Suddenly, she spoke. You see, Jung Wu, what would you say if you heard this? She revealed her wish. One day, I want to climb to the top of the tower. Upon hearing those words, he remained silent, just staring at her without saying a word, and the atmosphere grew still. She continued. A place where even gods and demons cannot reach. Are you curious about what might be there? She lay there waiting for his response. Seeing him still silent, she smiled and said, So Jung Wu. The moonlight from outside the window shone into the room through the frame, casting an eerie image of Viera Dune. You still don't talk to her, quietly listening to her speak. She reaches out and gently caresses your face, speaking with deep affection. You understand me, don't you? So let's go together until the very end. He begins to remember the moments when the two of them climbed the tower together on a mission, asking her to climb the tower with him. Viera Dune's greed has always haunted him like this, but Viera Dune only smiled without answering. Time passed, and during their mission while climbing the tower, an unfortunate incident occurred. He still remembers that terrifying scene very clearly. Around them, smoke and dust filled the air, as dark as the future of Sister Da. He recalled the moment when she absorbed Viera Dune with Bathory's vampire sword. In that instant, he realized that what she had always wished for had come true. He looked at his own hand, transforming before his eyes, unable to believe the events unfolding, that the Viera Dune she absorbed was nothing but an empty shell. Viera Dune had truly left the mortal realm, and had transformed into Mother Earth. He remembered the scene when she transformed into Mother Earth. She devoured the very deity she had served, with the sage stone she had perfected. Huan Wu recalled the moment when his younger brother was betrayed by her. She used the sword to stab straight into his heart, leaving a scar on Jung Wu's heart. The scene of being killed by the one he loved most was agonizing beyond measure. She began using the heart of the copper and the soul stone, combining them all together. As a result, she gained endless mana, allowing her to elevate her own magical essence. Through her connection with Mother Earth, Viera Dune gradually nurtured and developed her own identity, and then slowly cracked open, absorbing the power of Mother Earth like a secret virus sneaking into a computer and destroying the data within. Thinking of this, Huan Wu silently thought, I'm afraid of your humanity now. He thought about her insatiable greed, how, even though she longed to ascend, she had ultimately become a monster that devoured her own creator. He and Brahm stood below, looking up at her. He spoke sarcastically to her. Is the air up there as wonderful as you once thought? She replied, It's amazing. It's an atmosphere that mortals like you will never know. He chuckled bitterly, a flash of sadness crossing his face. Of course, you must love it. You won it by killing the man who loved you, betraying all those who helped you before. Hearing this, she fell silent, staring at him for a moment. Suddenly, countless eyes appeared in the air, all belonging to her. She spoke, I only came down to warn you. He lifted his head, puzzled, and asked, Warn me? When she spoke, her voice was deeply unsettling, sending waves of discomfort, as though tens of thousands of people were speaking at once. She continued, Yes, a warning. I don't want to interfere with your affairs right now. At present, I have no regrets about my life in the mortal realm. Viera Dune of the mortal realm. After all, Viera Dune is already dead, isn't she? So you should stop your revenge against me here. She coldly stared at him, her face showing disgust as she said, What a hassle. His emotions were hard to describe when he heard the indifference in her words. He felt that her irresponsible behavior at that moment was akin to throwing away a useless toy. Thinking of his poor little brother, Jung Wu, he began to harbor some resentment towards him for not seeing through her true nature. He thought back to the past, when his younger brother had given everything he had to her. His body, his heart, and his memories. He felt angry on behalf of his brother, glaring at her with eyes full of hatred. He resented not being by his brother's side at that time. To tell him that, to Dune, his existence was nothing more than a stepping stone to help her climb higher. With this thought, he lifted his head and said to her in a clear voice, Let me warn you again. As soon as he finished speaking, she sneered and said mockingly, "Ha, a mere mortal like you." His heart was filled with the determination to avenge his brother. Though his power and hers were worlds apart, perhaps even stronger than Herm's or King Miu. He took a deep breath and raised his head, sending her a challenge with his eyes. "Clean your neck and wait." Upon hearing this, she was shocked, seemingly unable to believe what she had just heard. "What?" He looked at her with icy eyes. "It won't take long. I'll come for your head." At that moment, her eyes widened in astonishment. She brought her pupils closer to him. Brahm sensed that the situation was not looking good. He was startled and panicked, afraid she might do something to him. She approached him, asking again, "Do you know what you're saying?" He calmly replied, "Of course." She gave him a warning. "No, you don't know you're saying you're going to kill a god. You don't understand what that means to a god." He remained indifferent and answered, "No, I know exactly what I'm saying." As he finished speaking, the system screen began to display notifications. The usual green color shifted to a red warning, alerting him. These warning messages were the god's reactions to him, all expressing discomfort and feeling insulted by his words. She looked down at him from above, unable to believe what was happening, and exclaimed, "You're insane." "Well, one more time. Having such foolish thoughts is a privilege that only mortals have." She looked at him with disdain, then raised his chin with her hand. He stood still, unfazed, staring back at her. After a moment, she left, disappearing into the sky. Brahm, feeling exhausted, held his head and irritably muttered, "Ha, really? Interesting, indeed." At this point, he was truly angry, having pieced together the entire story of his daughter's death. One person becomes a soul, while another ascends. The one who stole my daughter's life is now a god. He angrily thought to himself that there was no such thing as fairness in this world. After a while, once he had calmed down a bit, he stepped forward and said to him, "You see, you already said before, didn't you, that you would help me so that one day I could return to my original position?" He turned around and replied, "That's right." A determined expression appeared on his face as he said to him, "You better keep your promise. I will kill her with my own hands." He immediately rejected his idea no. Upon hearing this, he was surprised and asked again, "What?" He looked at him with a firm gaze. "If you tear her into hundreds of pieces, then I am that person. I cannot allow you that chance." At this point, he seemed to realize something. He smiled and said to him, "Then why should that opportunity be mine? I won't let you have it." It seemed that he also understood his point and said to him, "Then let's bet on who will do it first." The two extended their hands and shook hands, a gesture that served as proof of their bet. He said to him, "Sounds good." The gods, upon witnessing this scene, looked at them with disdain. The two of them walked forward, and he seemed to have realized the philosophy of life. "Indeed, to be honest, I know that the young man before me will overcome this, no matter the difficulties, even with the most uncertain trust." Then he looked at the young man walking ahead of him. He continued thinking, although everything had almost vanished after his preparations were stripped away in the prophecy, and with the small amount of divine power he still possessed, it was incredibly difficult for him to see. Everyone seemed very happy. Gradually, the images from his prophecy began to appear. People in the near future will no longer struggle like this, laughing and chatting happily. After the death of the Summer Queen, the Red Dragon was torn apart. The son of 9 dragons also began a civil war to fight for the throne. In the end, the dragon blood split into 3 factions. The White Dragon faction was led by Walt's Spring Queen. The Black Dragon faction was led by Autumn Lord Bioftom. And the Green Dragon was commanded by Liso and Baratan. Level 76, which had just stabilized, now fell into disarray. They plunged into a prolonged war, each trying to overpower the other. As if to match the changing times, other clans also underwent transformations. New clans emerged, threatening the power of the 8 great clans. New players appeared, gradually replacing the positions of the rankers. Truly, it was an era of chaos in the tower world, where strength was truth and law. Although the entire tower was in turmoil, the Huinwu side had entered a new phase of development. With the information Vera Dune uncovered, Ananta had been healed and suddenly opened her eyes, awakening. In the village deep in the bamboo forest, Brahm was taking Ananta for a walk to breathe in the fresh air. Session was carried by Cain, and upon seeing her mother, the little girl happily called out to her. Then, from Kane's arms. She jumped down and ran straight to Ananta, calling out, "Mom!" But she seemed to ignore the girl's calls, so she didn't respond. Then she turned back and looked at Sesha with a distant expression. "Oh, whose daughter is this awake?" Seeing this, the girl felt a deep sense of disappointment, not understanding what was wrong with her mother. Huan-Wu, standing from a distance, looked on with an indifferent expression. He seemed fine on the outside, but deep down, he was troubled by many thoughts. The scene shifted to the room where Brahm called out to Ananta, "Do you recognize me?" But in response to his question, she remained silent. It seemed that after waking up, she had lost her memory. As everyone had hoped, she had awoken after such a long sleep. Yet she had become emotionless, with a blank stare, looking into the void. Brahm and Kane stood there, utterly stunned. "So's, please save Ananta." After a while, Kane suddenly felt an intense anger rising within him. He slammed the teacup on the table. He sighed, feeling so frustrated that he wanted to smoke a cigarette. From the look in his eyes, one could sense the complete helplessness he was feeling. Then, he recalled the moment when Ananta was injured, feeling immense self-blame for not knowing Brahm at the time to let him heal her. Was she any better now? Lost in his thoughts, a voice echoed in his head. "How would you know? You don't have clairvoyance like All for One, or prophecy like the three Norn sisters, right? Don't keep it inside, you know." Just then, someone spoke up, asking him, "Why are you so down?" It turned out that the two siblings, Edora and Fant, were also there. The younger sister, concerned, asked, "Are you all right?" But he just sat there silently, as if deep in thought. He thought, "Yes, I have to admit that there is still much I need to protect. Bra, Anata, Sesha, they are very important to me. Not only that, but also the soldiers under my command, and not to mention the friends who stand by me, like Fant, Edora, and Galliard." After thinking for a while, he spoke up. "There's something I need to tell you all. I once said that when the time comes, I would reveal my true identity." He then raised his hand to take off his mask. Fant was shocked. When the mask came off, he was so stunned he couldn't speak. Edora, standing beside him, looked at him with emotion, silently thinking. Him. That day, Huan-Wu told them both the story of how he had come to the tower. As if he were recounting someone else's tale, he spoke more easily than he had expected. Fant was so angry he lost control, while Edora stood in silence, saying nothing. "We can't just let this go," Fant said in frustration. His fists clenched, his body trembling, unable to comprehend that Kane had gone through such hardships. The suffering of a clan member is the suffering of the whole clan. He had endured so much, yet that old man, who was supposed to be the clan leader, remained indifferent. Unable to hold back anymore, he stood up, intending to go find his father to talk. But Edora, calmer than him, shouted, "Sit down, you fool." Fant, hearing this, was furious. He turned to snap at Edora. "What did you say, fool?" She didn't back down and replied, "That's right, idiot. Do you think father doesn't know about him?" Then, with a sharp tone, she continued, speaking slowly, "You still don't get it, do you? Father is giving him a chance to spread his own wings. He even knows that one day he will leave." Fant froze when he heard Edora's words. At that moment, Huan-Wu spoke up, "I hope both of you can become his wings." They were both surprised by his proposal. He calmly looked at his mask, then said, "What I intend to do could be extremely risky. Danger could strike the tribe at any moment, because I am going to go against this tower." He hesitated for a moment, ready to continue, but suddenly Fant spoke up in support. "Brother, at times like this, you just need to ask everyone for help." He was stunned by his younger brother's words. He never expected Fant to care about him this much. Fant happily patted Edora's head and continued, "Don't worry about us. This girl is no different from a monster, and you too. Even if those bastards take the throne, all you need to do is beat them once, and take it back." After that, they started arguing in front of him. Truly, siblings are like hands and feet. When torn, they cover each other. When in trouble, they help each other. He sighed, feeling incredibly satisfied with his younger brother, and voiced his thanks. Fant and Edora both smiled at him. Then Edora suddenly asked, "By the way, what are you planning to do from now on? Didn't you already have everything figured out before you brought this up?" He silently looked at her, smiled happily, then nodded slightly in affirmation. "I plan to create my own tribe." At that moment, Yunwoo was practicing swordsmanship in the forest, his gaze reflecting a firm determination to accomplish everything. Perhaps due to the long hours of training, he felt extremely fatigued and lowered his sword to rest. Looking at his rough, calloused hands from the training, he felt a surge of strength. Eve just started. To protect everyone, I need to be stronger than I am now. Suddenly, a voice in his mind spoke, guiding him. Place your consciousness into the sword. Not only focus on it, but you must also become one with it. Only then will you be able to align with your desires. Following the guidance, he calmed his mind and tried to merge with the sword. Parallax gap, extrasensory perception. He closed his eyes to center himself, remembering the image of his father from years ago. With overwhelming strength, his father had slain countless enemies and was extremely skilled in magic. They often referred to him as a king. In that way, he vaguely perceived that realm level the stone emitted a tremendous energy. Because of its immense power, cracks began to appear on it. The stone split, revealing a gem inside. I consider the minister to be something akin to a gem. Hey, the stone cracked and caused an explosion. The explosion's shockwave slightly affected his training as well. Exhausted, he sat down and muttered, just as I expected, it's useless. The demon dragon body, the third step of the sage stone for awakening and regeneration, helps my body grow stronger quickly. But my consciousness is not developing at the same pace. Sometimes, during his spare time, he would climb mountains to improve himself. But sometimes, when he awakened too many supernatural abilities, his body couldn't handle the strength. Overthinking, coupled with the exhaustion from training, caused him to fall asleep. He blinked for a moment, then woke up. Someone called his name. Cain. Was Galliard. Cain asked Galliard, "What are you doing?" Galliard replied this, "Sisha has been eating poorly lately, so I'm trying to get her to eat vegetables. Sisha is half human, half dragon, and she doesn't like vegetables. Every time she sees them, she gets really upset." Galliard felt very helpless with how she acted. Cain suggested, "How about making seed meat for her?" Galliard asked, "What's seed meat?" Cain explained, "You just need to grind the seeds into a texture that resembles meat, then add some sauce to cover up the taste of the seeds." Galliard asked again, "Is that really a thing?" "I'm glad we found a solution to her vegetable problem." Back at Galliard's home, he followed Cain's instructions. Sesha really liked the dish and praised how delicious it was. She loved Cain's cooking, complimenting how great it was, and openly criticized Galliard's cooking as terrible. Her words were like daggers to Galliard's heart. Cain whispered to Galliard, "If you change the ratio of seeds to meat, she'll notice right away. So just adjust the ratio gradually." After eating, Sesha went to sleep. Galliard asked him, "Why you always seem so absent-minded?" He simply replied, "It's nothing." Galliard, with a worried expression, said, "If something's wrong, talk to me. If it can't be solved, I'll still listen." Galliard was definitely the kind of friend everyone should have. Cain, with a thoughtful look, pondered for a moment before replying, "Lately, I've been feeling stuck. My consciousness keeps fading, and my energy suddenly bursts out, only to disappear just as quickly. I feel like I've reached my limit, and even worse, I'm regressing." Galliard, noticing the issue, asked him to follow him to the back of the house. Cain didn't understand but agreed to follow Galliard to the back. Once there, Galliard broke off a branch. Cain asked, "A branch? What do you want me to do with it?" Holding the branch, Galliard gestured for Cain to attack. Cain questioned, "Why should I attack?" Galliard replied, "Attack. Let's go back to the basics in training and just use basic skills." Cain thought to himself, "What is he thinking? He seems like he wants to say something to me." He looked at Galliard, who exuded an intimidating cold aura, and thought, "Galliard's skills are those of a ranker, and my abilities are now on par with high-ranking rankers. But he's only using that branch to strike me." Galliard, with unwavering resolve, asked, "Are you really just going to stand there?" Cain took a combat stance, drawing his sword. He charged at Galliard. Galliard swiftly dodged the attack. In an instant, the branch landed on Cain's forehead. At that moment, Cain realized what had just happened. He was shocked, thinking to himself, "What just occurred?" Galliard, with just a simple branch, had been able to injure him. Cain touched his forehead in disbelief, astonished by Galliard's strike. Looking up at Galliard standing there, Cain couldn't understand how. He had used Dragon Eye and extrasensory perception to track Galliard, but he couldn't sense the speed of the branch. Galliard sneered at Kane, provocatively asking, "How's it going? Want to fight again?" Kane slowly stood up. Yes. He firmly gripped his sword, reminding himself not to be deceived under any circumstances. He activated Dragon Eye once more, focusing all of his energy on the attack. Kane fixed his gaze on the branch, trying to discern its trajectory. Galliard was no slouch either. He swung the branch behind his back. Kane quickly saw the direction of the branch and changed the direction of his sword, focusing all of his strength to break through. Galliard struck at the left side of his ribcage. Kane took a step back and swung his sword at Galliard on that breezy afternoon in the forest. Huan Wu was suddenly knocked back as though someone had hit him with great force. He hid behind his mask, frowning slightly and thinking, "I clearly used my sight to track him." A calm voice came from the side. "How's it going?" Huan Wu stood up right away and said, "Once more." It turned out to be Galliard. He smiled provocatively and said, "You won't change anything." The moment Huan Wu heard those words, his eyes gleamed strangely once again. He gripped his sword firmly, and a powerful, unwavering energy radiated from him as he declared, "This time, it will be different." Saying that, he took the initiative to rush towards the spot where Galliard was standing, closing the distance. However, he was repeatedly struck. First, it was in the arm area, which he managed to block. But it wasn't the case, as Galliard then delivered a blow to the center and kicked him in the stomach. This time, it was difficult to dodge the blow head-on. Then once again, Huan Wu collapsed before Galliard's relentless assault, even though he had tried to defend himself with a dry branch. At this moment, he was truly taken aback, a mixture of surprise and panic, and exclaimed, "Why? My skills aren't flawed. Even though I've observed him with my clairvoyance, it seems Galliard isn't using any skills or magic." Huan Wu looked at the man in front of him, puzzled. "How did you?" Suddenly, Galliard's eyes gleamed with a clear blue hue. Calmly, he spoke two words. "Willpower." His face was suddenly filled with shock, and his pupils dilated, revealing his surprise at this brief answer. At that moment, Galliard spoke up. "You always push your body to its limits during training, don't you?" Without hesitation, Huan Wu immediately replied, "That's right." Then he continued, "With the dragon's physical attributes, this may be the right method. Reaching the extreme limit of the body surely isn't easy. But the problem is, after that." Huan Wu, still confused, asked, "What do you mean?" Galliard tightly gripped his dry branch, and a surge of energy instantly erupted. His face darkened as he said, "It's not that you lack skill, but that you lack imagination." Huan Wu could feel the pressure emanating from Galliard's body. Every part of Galliard was radiating his willpower. Indeed, this was an energy he had never encountered before. It was known that willpower is when a person unleashes their inner strength outward, which is why there are two ways to use this technique. Extrasensory perception to understand the opponent and the surroundings, and aura to combine the mind and will, making the sword even stronger and sharper. However, he had never thought of combining the body and will. Huan Wu was lost in his thoughts. Galliard had infused his willpower into his body, merging consciousness and body into one. Only now did Huan Wu understand everything. Galliard, with the energy radiating from him, grew even stronger. The branch itself remained unchanged, but it was Galliard who had transformed. How had he gotten so close to him, without noticing? He had become like a storm, like a thunderstrike. Galliard moved forward, smiled lightly, and said, "Do you understand what willpower is now?" At this point, Huan Wu could only dumbly stare at the energy that Galliard had created, responding in a quiet voice. The strike from Galliard had caused a huge explosion with tremendous destructive power. After taking such a painful hit, with no strength to fight back, he lay silently amidst the wreckage. In his previous thoughts, the power of destruction was the true strength. That was why he only focused on enhancing the power of destruction. Galliard extended his hand toward Huan Wu, indicating his wish to help him stand up. He said, "Willpower is just a catalyst. To control strength, you must have the ability to freely control your will." Suddenly, a statement from Huan Wu left him astonished. "Zheng Wu once mentioned you." Huan Wu smiled and said, "The kid said you were his first master, and now I understand why he said that." Galliard chuckled out loud, awkwardly saying, "Master? Even after hearing it for 2 days, I still can't get used to it. He seemed to be thinking of something and smiled slightly. It turned out that Jungwoo had also been taught a lesson by him once. Smiling at the memory, perhaps he was fond of that moment. Galliard decisively suggested, "Since we're at this point, I'd like to be your brother's master as well." He chuckled lightly and looked at Hoinwoo. "Do you agree?" Hoinwoo immediately accepted without hesitation. "It would be my honor." Then, another day passed in the breezy forest. Meanwhile, on the busy streets, voices could be heard everywhere, and the atmosphere seemed bustling. From a small corner, a mysterious cloak fluttered in the wind. A figure in a black cloak let out a strange, soft laugh. The image of Hoinwoo standing silently alone on a high cliff appeared. The hidden figure thought to himself, "It's those eyes. Those eyes, I cannot ignore them." Although he appeared indifferent, those eyes could burn everything in their gaze. He called Jungwoo commander. Then came the scene of a woman, her body covered in blood, having fainted, with only the sound of a voice saying, "The commander has entered the tower." Remembering this, his eyes filled with bloodshot veins, and the muscles on his face became tense. "Commander, we will finish what we left unfinished on Earth and end it here." A moment later, he quietly left. Galliard asked, "Hoinwoo has understood the importance of the mind." "Right." He explained, "To activate the mind, one must control the body. The best way is to master the leg movements. The leg movements are a technique that involves moving the legs and shifting the body to reduce the weight." The most important thing was that Hoinwoo responded, "Flash steps." In his mind, he silently thought, "The foundation of Shikuchi. One of the 3 main skills of All for One." Galliard agreed with him. "Exactly, you must know the basics of it." Saying this, he prepared to demonstrate for Hoinwoo. He gently jumped up, hanging on a tree branch. Galliard happily said, "You can become light like this." Finishing the sentence, he jumped down to the ground, causing the earth to sink in, or heavy like this. He continued, gliding smoothly past him. "Bright and flashy like this, or silent like this." As soon as he finished speaking, Hoinwoo could no longer see Galliard. Just as the space was quiet, Galliard suddenly appeared right behind him, saying, "Flash steps really are a technique full of versatility, aren't they?" Hoinwoo asked how to master this skill. Seeing Galliard silent and not responding, his face stiffened. A moment later, Galliard smiled and ordered, "Run 1,000 laps around the village." Below, some farmers were discussing Hoinwoo's strange training methods. At this point, he was out of breath, sweat pouring down like a stream. Ignoring their chatter, he continued to train diligently. Eudora and Fant stood there, staring blankly at Hoinwoo's training. Galliard was throwing a strange object at Hoinwoo. His reflexes were quick. He leaped and caught it. Galliard kept throwing one object after another, and Hoinwoo kept catching them. In Eudora's eyes, Hoinwoo looked like a cute little puppy, while Fant seemed confused and didn't understand. By the final throw, Hoinwoo focused intensely on it, caught it, and was momentarily stunned. Looking at the object in his hand, he thought in surprise, "It's done." As he landed, he thought to himself, "The method to control a body is through enhancing the senses, changing the way you perceive from the outside and directing them inward." Seeing the notification boards appear, he joyfully ran forward with speed. Before, he had focused solely on strict training, so his muscles were as hard as stone. That was all part of his past. Now they were as flexible as rubber. Running toward the cliff, he leaped into the air like a professional dancer. As he was about to land, he happily realized he could feel every heartbeat, every cell. While resting, Galliard approached and said, "It seems you've mastered the basics. You've learned how to walk. Should we start learning how to run?" As if all the fatigue had vanished, Hoinwoo sprang up and asked, "What should I do?" Still wearing that same smile, Galliard held a branch and said, "In times like this, practice is the best thing." Hoinwoo didn't fully understand and froze for a moment. The next moment, he saw the two of them charging at each other, exchanging moves. Both of Eudora's siblings widened their eyes, watching. Eudora was pensive, while Fant seemed a little bitter, with veins visibly popping on his face. He must have felt frustrated seeing Hoinwoo's high level of skill. Fant angrily left, leaving Eudora puzzled. He stormed in, thinking back to the words spoken in the past. He gritted his teeth, seething with anger and a tinge of regret over the things he had said. From the first meeting, Hoinwoo had left a strong impression. He thought to himself, It's normal for someone to be stronger than him. Here I go again, convincing myself with that excuse to hide my own insecurities. Fant clenched his fist with determination. No, I can't keep chasing after him. I have to become stronger. With that thought, he charged straight into the elder's room, and threw the door open. The elder glanced at Fant with a puzzled expression. Fant boldly declared, "Teach me the blood lightning." The elder, who had been moving documents to another area, turned and looked at him. With a serious tone, he asked, "Do you even know what the blood lightning is to ask for it?" He replied loudly, "Of course, it's the invisible secret weapon, controlled by the mind, the secret weapon of the one-horned clan, and also the symbol of the bloodlight philosopher." Upon hearing this, the man thought he was truly foolish, and looked at him angrily with a cold gaze. He was now using the power that the other had hoped to learn, the blood lightning. He coldly said, "You are weak and foolish." Seeing the immense power radiating from him, the other stepped back a few paces in fear. The man began to compare him with others in the clan. "Among your brothers, many are stronger than you, and outside there are even more exceptional warriors than you. The mountains are high, but there are higher mountains. The only reason you're considered the most likely to succeed is because of your mother's and sister's power, not because of your own." With that, he turned and contemptuously spoke to him. "And who do you think I am?" Even the dark force, the black dragon, which once caused trouble here, had to show respect to me. Even the ancient scriptures you're holding were written by me, and I was the one who raised your father, the martial king. At this point, his power, the blood lightning, truly began to erupt. Hearing such insults and disdain, the other clenched his jaw, veins bulging on his face. He felt deeply humiliated, never imagining that in the man's eyes, he was seen as so useless. The man standing next to him was somewhat surprised, noticing that he didn't fly into a rage like usual. After thinking for a moment, he turned away, retracting his blood lightning, and said to him, "If you understand, then leave." Suddenly, he lowered his head, his expression serious as he spoke to the man. "Please, I beg of you, give me a chance." At that moment, he no longer cared about his pride. All he wanted was for the man to teach him the blood lightning. The man was greatly surprised by his actions. He observed him carefully and thought, "I never expected this. I thought this kid would be angry if provoked a little. To master a high-level skill like the bloodlight philosopher, one needs perseverance." He began recalling moments when the young man fought enemies on the battlefield. Fant, though skilled in martial arts, often gets into trouble because of his impatience. He remembered how the boy would recklessly fight, ignoring everything around him. Looking at him now, he observed the change in his demeanor. After thinking for a moment, he said, "All right." Hearing those words, the young man was surprised, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Had he improved? The man continued, "You must prove that you are worthy of inheriting my bloodlight philosopher. Show me." Upon hearing this, the young man felt that the man had indeed given him a chance. His eyes sparkled with hope as he asked, "How should I do that?" The man looked at him, feeling as though he were dealing with an irredeemable fool. Annoyed, he said, "You have to figure it out on your own. Do you expect me to serve it to you on a silver platter?" With that, he kicked the young man out of the door, shouting, "That's it. Now go." The young man was unceremoniously kicked outside. He fell to the ground, his body aching all over. Rubbing his horn with his hand, he lay there. Sitting there, he heard someone call his name. He looked up in the direction of the voice and saw her, calmly walking toward him, while holding a sword. Seeing her like that, he almost understood something, and said, "With that look, I guess." She firmly told him, I will climb the tower." Then she looked up at him, her eyes filled with determination, holding the sword tightly in her hand. Upon hearing that, he looked at her with a sense of regret and thought to himself, climbing the tower. So, you've made up your mind. In fact, he still had many things he wanted to say to her, but all he could manage was, "If that's the case, take care." Hearing that, she thanked him as well. Thank you." When they parted ways, she walked down the path toward the tower, and he watched her back, feeling a flood of indescribable emotions. After a while, he stretched and muttered to himself, "If she's gone, then I have to act too." At the same time, in the forest, he was training with Galliard. After hearing his story, he suddenly turned around and asked, "You're saying Fant closed off his training, right?" Galliard sighed helplessly and said, "Yes, it seems like he went to Marshal King to demand the key to Manhwa building." He repeated curiously, "Manhwa building?" He must be really determined. He recalled that space level. Mafia building was the deepest level of the closed-off training method. Practitioners could only bring food, and couldn't open the door from the inside, forcing them to be trapped in a small space of only 5 square meters. Galliard continued. He left without saying a word, just a letter behind. He really wants to seriously climb the tower. Hearing his words, he nodded and replied, I see. Seeing everyone working hard in their training, he reminded himself, I can't afford to fall behind. I have to keep training. As the oldest here, I can't let these kids surpass me. Time passed by. Fant was training in the Mafia building, trying to prove to the elder that he was worthy of inheriting his blood lightning. Meanwhile, Edora was tirelessly killing monsters in the tower, while he continued his training with Galliard to gain more experience for his skills. He looked down at his hand, deep in thought. After a moment, he gathered magic into his palm. Moments later, the magic turned into a flame. He gazed at the blazing fire and thought to himself, now I become accustomed to controlling my consciousness. Galliard suddenly flew in, as fast as the wind, and said, Congratulations, you've unlocked the Eye of the Storm. For someone from another race, this must have been no easy feat. Seeing him arrive, he extinguished the fire in his hand and said, I can only do it because of you, Galliard. That day, the system screen displayed a notification. You have acquired the skilled Dark Elf Hunter. Galliard looked at him with a satisfied expression, taking the role of a teacher, and said, Now, let's see if you're ready to try again. Upon hearing those words, he immediately entered a combat-ready stance and swung his sword. Looking at the blade, he pondered, Unite the sword's spirit with my own body. With that thought, he cast magic onto the sword. Moments later, the blade began to transform, radiating a glowing flame. He looked at the sword engulfed in flames, feeling the intense heat as if standing in front of a furnace. Galliard stood beside him, and, seeing this, joyfully said, It's a success. After a while, the fire gradually died down. Huan Wu sighed, saying, I knew it wouldn't work. A few months ago, Huan Wu's father had visited the Martial King's mansion. Huan Wu told the Martial King that he could no longer develop any further in terms of strength. The Martial King thought for a moment and then said, So what you're saying is that you feel you can't develop any further? Huan Wu responded, Do you know why? The Martial King pointed at him and said, It's simple, because this is not your path. Huan Wu couldn't quite grasp the meaning of the Martial King's words and asked, What do you mean? The Martial King did not answer his question. He turned his back and said, You'll have to figure it out yourself. He recalled the Martial King's words and pondered, So, what you mean is that the 8 trigrams and the martial extremes are not my path. He remembered when he saw the sword that accentuated his sharp features and cold eyes. He thought to himself that his swordsmanship had reached its peak. Huan Wu felt a bit dejected, knowing that this was not an easy thing to grasp. Just then, Galliard approached and patted him on the shoulder, comforting him, Don't rush. With the progress you've made since training started, you're already doing well. Maybe I'll spend more time looking for the answer. Galliard then said, A guest has arrived in the village. Do you want to go meet them? Huan Wu's father wiped the sweat from his face and asked, A guest? Is it? In the village below, the people were buzzing about a food stall. There are many fascinating items here, and people are eagerly grabbing them to take a look. 2 members of the one-horned tribe are laughing and chatting. The one wearing a hat taps it with a bong-bong sound. What about this? Does it suit me? The other one responds, bursting into laughter. It looks like a pig wearing a pearl necklace. The vendor, seeing the one tapping the hat, felt a wave of fear. He wanted to say something, but was scared of being beaten, as the one-horned tribe was terrifying. The vendor trembled uncontrollably. Sir, that item is very expensive, he said nervously. The vendor glanced to his left. The man with long purple hair and a horn on his left forehead was holding the item in his hand, looking at him like he was a fool. But he was the one who had crushed an 81-eyed skull with one hand and made it explode, causing everything around to be drowned in a sea of blood. The vendor quickly shifted his gaze to the right. The man with his hair tied neatly at the back pointed toward the one who had spoken earlier, saying, Just smash his head, right? The more complicated the machine, the better it works when it's hit. The man next to him was a savage who had sliced a dragon-like creature with a single strike and then ate it raw, praising the taste. The vendor, terrified, looked at the woman in front of him. She had long purple hair and a confused expression, holding the hat in her hand. In reality, she was the most insane of them all. She stood atop a pile of dead bodies and shouted loudly, "I have built the tallest tower since then." The one-horned tribe had been playing a game of building towers with the bodies of those they had killed, competing to see who could shatter someone else's skull into the most pieces. It was broken. The woman in front made the vendor turn pale with fear. He thought to himself, "They seem like a bunch of fools, with well-developed limbs but empty heads. Do they have any idea how expensive this is?" He cried silently, gritting his teeth and enduring it. "She's really terrifying. I shouldn't have gotten involved with her." A tall man casually picked up an item. "What's this?" He turned around, and the person was none other than Marshall King. Marshall King picked up the glove, examined it, and stroked his chin, complimenting it. "It looks pretty strong." He placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, making him flinch. "Would he break my shoulder?" Marshall King looked at him, thanking him for bringing such good items. "Sometimes, a little change of atmosphere like this is nice." Marshall King added, "Tell Frisia that I will make good use of it." Hearing that name, Frisia, the person who had been holding the item, cheerfully left. The mention of that name made him a little worried, thinking to himself, although Marshall King is powerful, shouldn't we be more careful when mentioning that person's name like that? Arden turned to look at Cha Hoin-woo approaching, staring at him with anger. But Hoin-woo was completely confused. Remembering the time he had met Hoin-woo, he had asked him to open the portal to buy the table. Arden held the crystal ball in his hand and cast a spell on it. It emitted a bright white light as he said, "Let's be clear about this. I'm only accepting a meeting request. That's all. They are the highest-ranking figures in our merchant world. Just meeting with them is already an honor." The light from the crystal ball grew even brighter. The two were then teleported to by the table. "This place is truly beautiful, with many animals, fresh air, and lush greenery." Hoin-woo looked around, and it seemed like the imagined world of Brahm, didn't it? Who would have thought that a single crystal orb could create such a barrier? Truly, by the table. From afar, the sound of footsteps approaching caught Hoin-woo's attention. A beautiful woman was riding on the back of a white wolf. Arden was terrified when he saw her, while Hoin-woo stood up and walked over. He thought to himself, "That person is." The wolf gently set her down. The woman had long hair and bright eyes, wearing a mask that covered half of her face. When Arden saw her, his body began to tremble, and many questions arose in his mind. Why was she here in person? She rarely made an appearance. There were even rumors that she'd never revealed her face. Hoin-woo walked up to greet her. "I didn't expect the master of By the Table to reveal themselves here." He looked at her and suddenly recalled the first time they had interacted with By the Table when Artea's reputation was spreading. They had made an enormous sponsorship, far beyond expectations. At that time, By the Table had offered to support Artea with a substantial sum, allowing them to expand to the fullest. In return, most associations would demand strategic results or set difficult terms. But By the Table did none of that. Back then, Jung-woo and the others were very curious, wondering why they were being supported like this. And of course, everything related to Frisia was a secret. The leader of By the Table rarely made direct appearances. It was only later that Jung-woo discovered her true identity. No one still knew the purpose of By the Table. But one thing was certain. Every time Frisia appeared, there was always one common factor, the presence of a king. She appeared before the masters of the towers, or those whom she considered worthy challengers. Hoin-woo said, "If she's come to meet me in person like this, it means she values me as much as Jung-woo." She wasn't rude and responded to him. "Nice to meet you. Do you want to meet with us?" She asked if he could tell her what the purpose was. Hoin-woo replied, "I'm planning to form a faction. I've heard that By the Table is funding certain factions." She immediately understood his purpose. She asked, "Are you requesting our support for a newly formed faction of the Hoarders?" The master of Frisia thought for a moment before replying. "Many people have contacted us like you, but we've turned most of them down. I think my answer this time will be the same." She looked at him, waiting for his reaction. "Is that so? Well, then I suppose that's it. Thank you for meeting with me." He turned and left, which surprised both Arden and her with his reaction. She asked him, "Is that your attitude?" He replied, "I made a request, and you rejected it, didn't you? Then, what else is there to discuss?" It was the first time she had encountered someone like this, and she thought to herself, What does he want? Does he think I'll chase after him just because he's acting tough? She continued to think about the hoarder she had investigated. It's not that simple. He's very cunning and knows how to turn an unfavorable situation into one that benefits him. She said, we can still talk a little, right? He didn't understand if she had the same thought as him. She said she's looking for the royal class individuals. Do you have any questions for him? Can I ask a few questions? Please go ahead. The girl raised her hand and continued, you have the assets of the Summer Queen, so why do you need us to sponsor you when you already have so much money? Huang Wu calmly replied, I don't. She responded, full of doubt. What are you talking about? We know for sure that the assets of the Summer Queen are in your hands. He fell silent and spat out each word. I've already used them all. Upon hearing this from his mouth, although his face was covered by a mask, the girl could clearly see the look of shock and surprise in his eyes. Huang Wu recalled the immense value of the Summer Queen's assets. It was an astronomical sum, and before, no one dared to spend it recklessly. However, what is right for others may not be right for oneself. He continued to recall the scene where Brahm was using magic to build dungeons, restoring the universe out there. He was remodeling the laboratory and buying new experimental equipment for research. The scene of the laboratory appeared. Finally, a hand signed the paper. The paper displayed the number 100 million G. You're lying. You're saying you've already used up all that money. The girl's voice rang out, filled with disbelief. Huang Wu calmly responded, besides the treasure, the equipment was sold off, and I only kept what was necessary. I've already used up all that money. The man beside her was also startled when he heard those words. He thought, is the equipment half crazy? Do you have any idea how much that is? Just the equipment alone. It's already beyond the annual spending a large guild. That man was the one who sold equipment at the night market. The girl who had just laughed loudly made both of them look at her. Haha, you got quite the appetite. Truly insatiable greed. She crossed her arms and smiled, asking, how much money do you need? Huang Wu calmly extended his hand, his gaze unruffled as he replied, the more, the better. That money will be spent quickly. A sly smile appeared on her face as she lightly touched the mask she was wearing. It seemed that he had already planned to use it. Fine then. She gently gestured to the man beside her, giving the order to discuss the details with Arton. But before leaving, there was something he needed to know about her. The merchant, his face drenched in cold sweat, was slightly startled by her actions. Do you mean that? She turned back slightly, her mischievous smile still present, but her demeanor now calm and composed. I never make deals when I'm certain to lose. If I think you don't have the ability to pay back that debt, or if I lose interest in you later. She lingered on the last two words. Her emerald green eyes seemed to glow in the darkness, and her face suddenly became more serious. Well, then. Huang Wu's father, standing beside her, also silently assessed her demeanor. She speaks like a shark preparing to hunt. She continued walking forward, suddenly surrounded by blue lights. Calmly, she spoke again. It ends here. The bystanders shouted loudly, Master. Then she gradually disappeared, following the flow of the blue light. The merchant beside her bowed, honored to meet her. He was momentarily confused. Ah! Huang Wu, standing nearby, slightly adjusted his mask, thinking to himself that the necessary funds to establish his guild were in place. Now was the time to climb the tower again. But before that, he had to confront the Summer Queen and settle things once and for all. Unnoticed, all their actions had been observed by the giant serpent perched on the tree. Its eyes glowed with a fierce yellow, and it hissed, silently continuing to watch him. Elsewhere, Hermes appeared pensive. He tilted his head slightly, his wide blue eyes sparkling, a faint smile playing on his lips. Now, what would he do? That was the 98th floor of Olympus. Hermes rested one foot on his knee, gleefully speaking to the woman beside him. That kid. He glanced up at her and asked, Sister, why do you look like that? Are you worried about that kid? He continued, I haven't seen you look like that in a long time, have I? The woman looked at Hermes briefly. Her armor, a reflection of her strong character, marked her as the goddess of wisdom and war, Athena. Athena spoke, It seems the gods still haven't managed to defeat that kid, just as you predicted. Then, the image of the sea god appeared in her mind. He seemed rather angry as he raised his staff and said, Anyone who dares challenge the gods will receive the punishment they deserve. The gossip continued on. Don't rush like that, sis. We know that kid better than anyone, right? That kid has defeated heirs. We can just sit back and watch what happens next. The gossip continued on. Don't rush like that, sis. We know that kid better than anyone, right? That kid has defeated heirs. We can just sit back and watch what happens next. Herms rested his chin on his hand, a frown on his face. This damn system has been holding us back for too long. Then suddenly his face twisted with anger, his emerald eyes glowed, and it was clear that all the trouble was caused by Apollo. He looked up at his sister and said, "And this is the first time I've seen you care about someone like that, and he's not even a follower." Athena's demeanor now seemed quite conflicted in her thoughts. Herms continued, "The other siblings will be shocked when they see you like this." The scene on the 98th floor of Olympus was idyllic, with a jade-colored sky. Amidst the beauty, Herm's thoughts lingered. I wonder how many gods and demons are watching this kid like we are. Dozens? No, hundreds. Cut to Xia Huanwu. He was walking forward under the pitch-black sky. A door appeared before him. Beside it stood a tall skeleton in iron armor, standing imposingly in front of him. He thought to himself, "Is this the Ruby of Bu?" The skeletons from earlier subtly glanced at Father Huanwu, their eyes empty yet full of attention. Suddenly, one of them knelt before Father Huanwu, its hand placed on its chest in a gesture of reverence, as a beam of light crept through the door that was slowly opening. Huanwu strode in boldly, and around him, the skeletons bowed down, creating a solemn scene. Suddenly, a voice echoed, "Has the master returned?" Master. It was the one without eyes, nose, or mouth with distinctive horns. Behind him were strange, grotesque objects, exuding a terrifying aura. Huanwu placed his hands on his hips, his gaze sweeping around suspiciously as he asked, "What are these things?" The eyeless figure bowed respectfully, speaking gently, "Master, everything here is normal. Nothing to be surprised about." He looked at the bizarre objects and thought, zombie golems, hungry ghosts, death goddesses, and night demons too. Seems like their loyalty will deteriorate over time. Huanwu said, "Deal with them. They're becoming a burden." The faceless one replied respectfully, "Understood." Then, he, along with the strange objects, proceeded into the basement. As they walked, Huanwu asked, "What about the creation of the bone dragon?" The figure answered, "It is completed." Huanwu said, "Let's go." In the basement, a stern voice rang out, "Be careful, watch out for those bones. I don't want them scratched." What met his eyes were skeletons toiling away at their work. However, beside her, there was a bright object observing with crossed arms. On the other side, Brahm was kindly directing the skeletons to work. Next to him were Hanova and several skeletons carrying items. The gigantic skeleton stood tall in front of Huanwu and the faceless man. He slowly walked toward where Ismenias was sitting. Around Ismenias were streams of black and green energy, creating a gloomy and mysterious atmosphere. Her face and eyes were completely emotionless, showing no signs of any feelings. She cast a cold gaze toward the person calling her name, Ismanos, and she was indeed the Summer Queen. It turned out the one calling her was Huanwu, who smiled victoriously and asked, "How does it feel to see your own corpse torn to pieces?" She coldly smirked, locking eyes with Huanwu, and replied, "Is it time?" He looked at her with contempt and answered, "Yes. And what do you think will happen if a young half-dragon absorbs a dragon? Can you imagine it?" The woman bound to the chair laughed wickedly, challenging Huanwu. "Want to know? Go ahead and try." She remained silent, her gaze lowered, not saying a word. In her cold eyes, she thought back to her past, with the dragon. The flames that always burned within the dragon clan, and the eternal curse of solitude, had now been broken. It was because of these things that Huanwu always referred to them as ghosts. Huanwu extended his hand, filled with black power, toward her, just as she thought she would only recognize it before death. He coldly looked at her and said, "Take care, Ismenias." In the past, he had told her that if she could escape the shadow, she would be able to see a sight she had never seen before, and he would help her. With sincere eyes, he looked at her, and hoped that she would tell him when the time came. Ismenias returned, laughing bitterly, and then collapsed before the power of Huanwu. A powerful surge of energy began to spill out. Huanwu was worried, unsure whether it was dangerous, Suddenly, he heard someone call him master. In front of him appeared a support figure coming to deliver a message. Because you have absorbed Ismenia's soul, your power and skills have been upgraded, and you have received new rewards and titles. He was anxious because while his spiritual power had increased, nothing seemed to have changed. Should I enter the mind realm to check? Suddenly, a portal to the mind realm appeared. Huan Wu shifted into the space and entered the mind realm. Finally, he arrived at the mind realm, a place filled only with rocks and stones. He thought that his potential, abilities, and soul were even more unpredictable than he had imagined. Standing on a rock, he looked up at the starry sky, and his body suddenly became unusual. Huan Wu suddenly looked up and thought, thousands of eyes are watching him, and the scene of a library filled with magical books and divine potions appeared. In the same scene, a glowing-eyed cat stood on a rock, making him feel a strange familiarity, though now the feeling seemed clearer than before. The image of a woman and a man, their warm gazes meeting. The image of a man with an angry expression, holding a trident in his hand. He sighs, waking up, ignoring the discomfort, but for now, he needs to set it aside. In a room filled with books on magic, a voice rang out. It was the voice of a man placing his hand on Huan Wu's shoulder, saying, "You will soon finish the laboratory and continue treatment for Ananta. Don't worry about things here. Focus on climbing the tower." The man's eyes brightened as he gave Huan Wu a warning during the climb. "If you find anyone useful, bring them along, but don't trust everyone. There's danger in doing so." Huan Wu understood and agreed. He walked toward the teleportation door, then turned back, promising to return. He disappeared into the light emitted by the gate. He was teleported to a place filled with snow and ice. This was the 26th floor of the tower, the Wall of Wailing. Huan Wu stood on a city wall, gazing at the snow-filled valley and the two towering ice mountains. He guessed that this floor was in the snow mountain area. Then, looking down to examine more closely, he realized it wasn't the case. He was standing on a fortress. Suddenly, a noise came from behind him. It was a group of players with the same goal as his, and they too recognized who he was. He calmly ignored the other players, but thought that if there were only a few thousand monsters, he could handle them. However, if the number reached millions, he would not be able to deal with them alone, and cooperation with other players would be essential for self-preservation. That was the very essence of his mission. Huan Wu stood there, observing them to see if he could find someone to cooperate with. However, the player who was assisting him felt as if they were not simply interested in cooperating with him. Countless soldiers in silver armor were all looking toward Huan Wu. He looked down at the base of the wall. Everything was covered in white due to the blizzard. The 26th floor was inspired by the ongoing battle between the sun god and the dark demon Apophis. Apophis frost monsters possessed strong ice energy. They did not feel pain, even when their bodies were torn apart, and the closer one got to the center, the stronger the monsters became, making it difficult even for high-level players to handle. There were two ways to overcome it: a bright red triangular gemstone, like blood. It was the tear of a god, and the challenge was to protect it from the attacks of the frost monsters for a month. These monsters attacked around midnight every day, but there was one problem. As food and water reserves began to dwindle, internal conflicts would inevitably arise. Huan Wu turned back to look at the soldiers, thinking to himself, "If there were about 1,000 monsters, I could handle it on my own. But if there were millions attacking at once, that would be impossible." In other words, in order to protect the tear of the god, the players must cooperate with each other. That's the key. Observing their wariness, the scared man in Huan Wu said, But do those people really cooperate? It seems like they already see each other as enemies." Huan Wu guessed that cooperation was probably impossible. Dealing with the monsters was already hard enough, and now if they fought each other, it would be even more troublesome. He'd have to handle it on his own. Such a hassle. Grabbing the glass bottle with red liquid in his coat pocket, he thought to himself, "Besides, I still want to try a few things." A black skull appeared, carrying a deadly black aura, with a faint white-blue glow in its eye sockets. Black desiccated skeletons crawled up from the ground, extending their bony hands toward the feet of the soldiers. They screamed in terror. "What is that?" The group immediately shouted at Huan Wu's father, "Did you do this, accumulator?" He merely responded, "You all protect the fortress, and I'll provide the necessary supplies." He raised his hand, and a bright red gem floated above it. Huan Wu said, I have the tears of the deity right here. The soldiers gasped. Those are the tears of the deity. How is that possible? Without hesitation, Huan Wu's father leaped off the city wall. The people around shouted, What? He's crazy. The wind blew upwards, making his cloak flap wildly as he kept falling. Huan Wu thought to himself, the second way to complete the mission is to steal Apopha's fangs from the center of the ice monster's base. Flames sprouted from behind Huan Wu's back. He landed on the ground, and the air around him was shaken, spreading out like a swirling vortex of wind. He silently thought to himself, of course, stealing Apopha's fangs was much harder than guarding the tears of the gods. Huan Wu stood up and called out, Shannon, Hanryong. Two dark cracks appeared behind him, emitting black mist, from which emerged two powerful spirits. The dense black smoke churned and stirred up the snowstorm. Huan Wu muttered, No need to wait for the monsters to appear at midnight. The tremors, like an earthquake, are already reaching us. The soldiers on the city wall staggered, struggling to keep their balance, and called out in confusion, What's that? An avalanche. One soldier quickly pointed forward and shouted, Over there. Gigantic legs appeared on the snowy ground, and countless monsters gathered together, densely packed like a sea of ants, slowly advancing toward the fortress. Huan Wu silently thought, with millions of ice monsters at the center, I must charge in with all my strength. They stared at the monstrous horde, fear in their voices, exclaiming, So many monsters! Wait, what's that light? A bright blue-white light shone powerfully from the sword that Huan Wu's father was drawing. Glancing at the sword, he silently thought, The Summer Queen. Huan Wu's father wondered to himself, what would happen if the noble blood that created the red dragon with 81 eyes were to be poured into the holy sword? Without thinking too much, Huan Wu took out the dragon's blood bottle, opened the lid, and poured the liquid onto the blade. The blade absorbed the fresh blood, and the blood flowing across it formed a pattern resembling the veins of a living creature. Once fully absorbed, the light from the holy sword became even more intense. The cursed holy sword had its curse cleansed by the dragon's blood, revealing its original power. The sword's ascension meant that the more enemies it faced, the stronger the user would become, amplifying their power with a spreading effect of blessings. When killing enemies, a curse would simultaneously be placed on other targets within range, reducing their defense and movement speed. The reduction in these stats would increase the user's own power. The indomitable spirit effect of the hero, when activated, greatly increased attack power, but at the cost of decreased defense. The effect from slaying enemies increased accuracy and critical hit rate. However, the holy sword had only removed 99% of the curse. Its true name was still hidden and needed to be discovered to fully unleash the final form of the sword. Huan Wu raised the sword and activated the fire wave skill. A fierce flame blazed on the sword's edge, scorching the surrounding space and raising the temperature to terrifying heights. He swung down, unleashing a fiery burst of magic, and columns of flames appeared, spiraling and burning the monsters. The creatures, consumed by the flames, were burned to death without any resistance. He did not stop, continuing to swing the sword, thinking to himself, It will definitely be powerful when Vigrid is unleashed, just need to intensify it here. The scorching flames melted the thick snow, leaving behind a blackened, parched ground, with the fire continuing to burn endlessly. What is Vigrid saying, Master? If you release more energy than your body can handle. Huan Wu replied, I'm fine. He recalled Galliard, who seemed to be asking his father, Huan Wu, Now, do you understand the meaning of the concept I mentioned? Become your own storm, become the lightning. It felt like the wooden sword falling back then, and he said, I will become the fire. Huan Wu looked ahead, the flame on the sword burning brighter. The monsters rushed towards him, like giant, ferocious snow apes. Flying amidst the horde, his fiery wings and the blazing fireball on his sword made Huan Wu appear like a god of fire. He swung his sword relentlessly, cutting down enemies. He wondered, how many times have I swung my sword like this, in a frenzy? On the 10th time, Vigrid emitted a brighter light than ever before, but after that, it no longer shone. Huan Wu continued to swing his sword, even though the flame had gone out. He silently counted in his mind. The 90th time, the fire no longer appeared, only the sound of the wind blowing. Huan Wu thought to himself, the 95th time, even the wind became silent. It was as calm as the eye of the storm, the light, the temperature, and even the wind. All the skills had become trapped in my concept. At this moment, dark energy surged from the sword, staining it a deep black. Huan Wu thought to himself for the 99th time. Vigrid had turned into a solid pitch-black color, as dark as an abyss. A flame, like a shadow, erupted in a straight line, and black fire was created, swiftly slicing through the monstrous creature, leaving a dark streak like an ink smear. It screamed, "Monster!" Huan Wu stopped, and an announcement echoed. "You have successfully defeated the 13th Legion and its commander, Huey." Following that were notifications about Huan Wu's abilities. "You have acquired a new way of using thoughts, successfully formed a powerful aura, learned to control the fire within, and greatly increased your mastery and power over fire attributes. Fire wave skill completed." Huan Wu looked up at the sky, his eyes flashing with a dazzling golden light. A notification appeared, stating, "Fire wave. The player has condensed various sources of power to the extreme, focusing on the fire-thunder skill. Due to its versatile usage, it possesses immense destructive force and explosive power." It continued, "Fire-thunder creates a powerful explosion proportional to the amount of magic consumed. Depending on the situation, it can break through defensive barriers, leaving the opponent confused. The lightning will carry the firepower further, triggering continuous explosions. The flame will not easily be extinguished. This skill is unique, found only in." The sword strike he made caused the monkey's head to fly off for kilometers. Huan Wu stood, gazing at the ice mountain, with fiery wings behind him. The notification board appeared once again. "Aidsrael blesses you and grants the power of the third heaven spirit. Many demons associated with death reveal their greed toward you." Hanryong spoke up. "It seems that after a while, you're enjoying causing trouble again, Master. We're in trouble once more. Do you take pleasure in those deaths?" Huan Wu stood silent, then startled, asked, "What?" Hanryong was confused, lost in thought, wondering, "Am I enjoying this?" He replied, "No, it's nothing." Entering the next level, it was filled with sharp ice blocks. "So, you're the human?" the dragon monster asked, but Huan Wu did not answer. It bared its sharp teeth, its tongue longer than the list of your ex-lovers, and continued, "It's impressive you've come this far." Looking at him, it mocked, "Are you scared now, human?" He responded, "It seems your physical strength and mana are nearly exhausted." It arrogantly summoned a group of minions to deal with him. As soon as it finished speaking, a huge number of dragon monsters appeared from nowhere. One of them, an apois, bared its fangs to intimidate him. He thought to himself, each one of them was on par with a legion commander. Standing at a considerable distance, Huan Wu could still feel the threat from them. Looking at the ferocious dragons, he showed no fear. "I think for this dragon, it's just a small challenge," he thought, then jumped high into the air, surprising the creature. Huan Wu felt confident. His stamina would recover quickly, but mana wasn't so simple. Still, he believed he could defeat it. He began, "Open domain, dragon form awakening, stigma of the goddess, evil spirits, soul." A flame shot from the battlefield straight into the face of the monster dragon, causing it to scream in pain. Under the light of the flame, Huan Wu's face became lined with wrinkles. The fire sent the dragons flying into the air, and a notification appeared. "Do you want to register?" He declined to register, yet his achievement would still be engraved in the tower. Suddenly, Hanryong spoke up. "Wait, Master." He turned in confusion. Hanryong said, "What about the fangs of Apophis?" He suddenly remembered, It snapped, "Don't just say to me." Looking down at the lava below, Huan Wu was about to jump down to retrieve the fangs, but Hanryong stopped him. However, Huan Wu leaped down without hesitation. He safely returned with Apophis's fang. It was the fang of the hidden boss Apophis from the 26th floor. It contained venomous glands that harmed enemies. A ruby appeared, a sacred item granted by the sun god to protect the fortress. Hanryong angrily scolded, "Are you really going to throw me into this sea of flames?" Huan Wu coldly replied, "As long as you're not harmed, that's all that matters." He used his magic on the two treasures, which merged to form the core of gods and demons. In the past, Huan Wu's brothers couldn't decide between choosing divinity or evil, and in the end, they entrusted their divine power to Ether, who had gained the divine power he had always desired, only to betray his younger brother. Han spoke up. What's wrong? Are you struggling with an inner conflict about which one to choose? But Wu had already made his decision. Slowly, he removed his mask and said, Divine power. Wu thought that the divine power he had obtained was a small part gained by serving Brahm. Looking at the core in his hand, his subordinate asked, Is it supposed to turn into something cute? Wu was teleported to the waiting room on the 27th floor. He wondered why he wasn't teleported to the starting area, but to the waiting room instead. Unlike the lower floors, which contained only one challenge and one world, from the middle floors onward, the world was divided into multiple parts based on one large challenge and several smaller ones. On the 30th floor, the accumulated achievements of players from floors 27 to 29 would finally be tested, so no mistakes could be made in the previous 3 floors. Wu thought, it seems like I'll have to handle multiple challenges at once. The scale might be slightly bigger than the previous floors, but in the end, the mission is the same, just with a higher score to achieve. He opened the door to the 27th floor and stepped inside. In front of him, a group of people were repairing a boat, preparing to set sail. He widened his eyes and glared at them fiercely. The challenge on the 27th floor is to survive and cross the vast river that separates the 2 worlds. Now you have become one of the souls of the dead. You must safely cross the river of death within 49 days. If you fail to reach your destination within the time limit, you will be stripped of your right to reincarnate and sentenced to wander as a ghost for the rest of eternity in the afterlife. First, escape safely from the various threats on the island. As he approached the riverbank, an aura of death permeated the air. A strange boat was docked on the shore. The system screen appeared, analyzing the state of the river. The river of the dead is highly corrosive and toxic, to the point where ordinary boats can barely navigate it. Therefore, players have no choice but to seek help from someone to obtain a boat, and that someone is none other than the ferryman Charon. Before him appeared a towering figure cloaked in white, with its face hidden, only its yellow eyes glowing mysteriously. Beside it stood a giant demon with a single horn on its head, always carrying a massive hammer, observing him closely. A notification appeared on the system screen. Identity: Charon. Charon is a character from Greek mythology. He is the ferryman of Hades, responsible for transporting the souls of the dead across the river Styx and river Acheron to the underworld. To pay the ferryman for his service, the ancient Greeks would place coins in the mouths of the deceased. Since before, Charon had taken away the karma and benefits of the players when they had to cross the river of the dead, selling them false information and deceitful actions all this time. He was greedy, always exploiting the gold coins from the deceased. In addition, he could provide materials for the players. But if they wanted him to row the boat, they had to pay a certain fee. He always deceived others to steal their coins. The quality of the boats he made was subpar, yet he demanded all sorts of things, making the players lose trust in Charon and flee from him. As soon as he reached the river of the dead, Charon approached him. He was standing not far from the river, and Charon had noticed his presence. He walked over and said, "Hello, traveler. If you pay a small fee, I can teach you a very simple way to cross the river." Hearing this, he seemed to know that Charon had already targeted him to be his next victim. He calmly opened the system screen and threatened him, saying, "What will happen if I report you? All the times you've betrayed the players, is that going to show up here?" Charon, upon hearing this, panicked and rushed over to stop him. Wait. After checking the system notifications, he learned everything his younger brother had gone through. In the end, Wu had extracted all the information from him, and Charon, terrified, disappeared. He looked up at the system screen, pondering, so I can use that method. While thinking about what to do, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, you're the accumulator, right?" He turned his head in the direction of the voice and saw a large figure approaching, his shining iron armor gleaming. He stepped toward him, accompanied by another man who seemed rather ordinary. He introduced himself. "I'm Hector, and this is Ibrahimovic." Seeing him approach and introduce himself like that, he felt a bit suspicious and asked, "So what?" Noticing his cold demeanor, the two of them felt awkward and uncomfortable. Hector tried to salvage the situation by asking him, "Don't you know who we are?" At this point, a thought crossed his mind. Fantasy Regiment. A few names related to this idea appeared in his head. After the collapse of the Holy Sword faction, and the internal division of Azure Sword into 8 factions. There had been some changes. All for one: White Dragon, Black Dragon, Elohim, Demon Clan, Blood Nation, Sea of Eternity, and the Dogwood Brotherhood. He recalled that White Dragon and Black Dragon, having split from Azure Sword, had taken the vacant positions left by the Holy Sword faction. After their decline, with everyone vying for higher positions, competition had become fierce. Some forces had also risen to threaten their status. The Fantasy Regiment was one of those forces. The 108 major and minor factions had allied to form this legion. In fact, at that time, the legion had swept through the lower and middle levels of the tower quite extensively. However, it could also just be a gathering place for the mediocre. After considering this, he asked them, "Is there something you need?" Seeing his response, Hector answered, "I'm sure you've heard that Charon is demanding a lot of materials and money to build the ship, right?" He maintained his cold attitude and replied, "Yes." Hearing this, a trace of doubt crossed his mind. He wished he could look at the soldiers moving the wooden panels that made up the ship's armor behind the two of them, no matter what they were saying. Seeing the frantic, hurried expressions of those people, he thought to himself, "It seems like they are forcing the other players to do the heavy manual labor. They've used the pretext of cooperation to oppress and threaten the players here with violence. Is this how they are building their power in the tower?" Not wanting to listen to them any longer, he immediately turned around and walked away. He said, "I'm not interested in any kind of cooperation. Whatever they say, they were caught off guard by my actions." At this point, the tall man seemed like he was about to explode with rage, his face contorted with anger and veins bulging. He shouted at him, "You bastard, when I was speaking civilly, you should have agreed." By now, he had completely abandoned the friendly demeanor he had earlier. He was gathering magical power in his hands, preparing to attack. He thought to himself, when words fail, violence takes over. Suddenly, he felt an unusual sharp pain in his body. It turned out that the other man had already moved faster than him, stabbing him with a sword, causing him to collapse in pain. Seeing this, the man was terrified, losing his balance and falling onto the ice. After dealing with the large man, he stood up and threatened the remaining one, saying, "Do you have anything else to say?" Seeing that the man didn't say anything more, he turned and walked away, leaving a large, muscular man lying in a pool of blood and a cowardly one behind him. A while later, he moved to another area in the forest, surrounded by countless human bones. He touched a nearby withered tree and said, "Found it." In that forest, all the trees were dry and withered. He said, "This type of wood isn't corroded by the river of the dead. It's ghost wood." As soon as he finished speaking, the tree trunks suddenly transformed into monsters. They let out terrifying shrieks. Seeing this, he calmly leaped up, dodging the ghost wood's attacks. He easily sliced through each branch one by one, cutting them into pieces. While he was diligently picking up the branches, a man in the distance stood beneath a tree, seemingly afraid after witnessing his immense power. After a while, he ran off to report to Ibrahimovic. "Master Ibrahimovic," he said. Ibrahimovic quickly ran over. Seeing the man return, he turned and asked, "Is he the one who's accumulating?" The man panted and replied, "It seems like he's gathering materials, but the materials he's collecting are a bit unusual." Upon hearing this, a sense of worry arose in Ibrahimovic's heart. He angrily bit his fingernail and said to the man, "Whatever it is, it's probably some kind of mysterious material or something. In the end, he is the one ranked first from the first tier, and we must finish the ship before him." The person, upon hearing this, didn't quite understand and asked, "Hey, what's going on?" He replied, "Think about it. To sail a boat out to sea, one needs a pilot and a crew, right? But in the end, there's only one person who has all the experience. If a ship has only one person on board among many other ships, what do you think will happen?" At that moment, it seemed like the person began to understand what he meant. He looked at the other mark on his hand, and after some thought, said, "When he agrees to submit, that will be the moment we seal him with this mark." He then repeated the rules of the Illusionary Legion. The method used by the Illusionary Legion to expand its forces was to force people to join by marking them with the demon's contract seal. Having said that, he moved toward the soldier and threatened him. "All of you, go collect the materials. Humans will offer Charon more karma, so he can build the ship for us faster than the one you're building for yourself." At that moment, the soldier was terrified, but unable to do anything. Meanwhile, In the forest, he was chopping wood frantically to build the ship. The system appeared and spoke to him. "But master, what ship are you intending to build? I don't know what you're planning. With the materials you gathered so far." One of the other systems overheard this, and also said, "I feel the same way. There's no ship made of phantom wood on Charon's list of finished products." Upon hearing that, he coldly replied, "We don't need Charon, we just need a skilled shipwright." With that, his cold gaze turned toward the members of the tribe in the forest. Just in time. At this point, he had been surrounded by the tribe members. The system, noticing this, suddenly asked, "Do the wild tribes eat humans? They have the intellect and the ability to create their own civilization." But the players treated these man-eating monsters as mere beasts, hunting them down and killing them because these monsters enjoyed hunting, cooking, and eating players. Therefore, the players chasing them weren't wrong. However, they were only defending their territory. He recalled the images of humans being hunted and killed by that tribe. The system scoffed and said, "Why are there so many people wanting to commit suicide around the master these days? You know, there are many ways to die." He stood there, calmly observing what they would do. Suddenly, they took out small darts and blew poison needles toward him. With just a slight wave of his hand, he could avoid the needles. Using the strength he had learned from being with Galliard, he manipulated the needles to turn and fly back at the cannibal tribe members. When struck, they screamed in pain. Seeing that they seemed unable to counterattack, he coldly asked in their language, "Answer me, where is your village?" The leader, upon hearing this, was taken aback. He suspiciously asked his companions, "How is it that this player can speak our language?" Except for the one next to him, who remained stubborn. The leader shouted, "Dream on, I have nothing to say to a player." As soon as he finished speaking, a needle flew at him, ending his life. At that moment, the system displayed the notification, "Cannibal Monster 72 killed." At this point, the tribe members were truly furious. Their eyes turned red, preparing to attack him soon. Another notification appeared on the screen. "Cannibal Monster 111 killed. Cannibal Monster 238 killed." Seeing that they were still stubborn, he moved behind the leader, asking again, "Where is the village?" The leader remained obstinate, refusing to speak. He said, "If you want to kill, just do it. One day disaster will strike you." A loud snap of breaking bones echoed, and the system screen flashed with a notification. "Monster 141, the man-eating creature, has been killed." The system continued to ask him, "Master, why are you killing them all? Be careful. What if you're speaking and—" He paid no attention, still gripping the neck of the man-eating creature. Monster 141. More and more tendrils of black smoke began to appear, gathering into a large mass in the sky. The system screen flashed again with another notification. 25 man-eating creatures have died somewhere on this island. Upon realizing this, the high priest was deeply saddened. Following the high priest's orders, the priests began chanting prayers for the souls of the fallen. After a while, the high priest appeared, advancing with a group of priests who muttered incessant prayers. At the same time, by the riverbank, soldiers who were preparing boats received a notification from the system. They were panicked, not understanding what was happening. What's going on? Who did this? Which bastard did this? Hearing their screams, he smiled, having achieved his goal. Team Trinity ventured deep into the desolate forest, where white bones lay underfoot, and a black raven perched on a tree branch. They were stunned by the sight of blood everywhere, and the bodies of the team that had gone before them. The man leading the group furrowed his brow, then turned to look at the girl Heidi. Her face was still filled with fear, her gaze fixed ahead, and she gripped her staff tightly. Heidi was horrified as she thought about something. The players before my eyes were sprawled all over the place, missing arms and legs, with swords embedded in the ground. They seemed to have been played with to death. Earlier there was also news that a large number of man-eating monsters had died somewhere across the area. When the Pope realized that many players had perished, he was enraged. At the Pope's command, lower-ranking priests began to pray for the souls of the monsters to rest in peace. Suddenly, a group of pitch-black monsters surged forward. Sensing the two people's panic, they turned to look. She was horrified and turned her gaze upwards. The flesh-eating demons stood in a neat line, holding hands. The demon lowered its head, letting its white hair cascade, and held its palm up to catch the stream of bright red blood. Team Trinity quickly fled, fear evident on each of their faces. They hid in the bushes, crouching low. A large foot stepped closer. Heidi curiously looked up and saw a furry monster with sharp fangs and red, bloodshot eyes staring down at them. On its shoulder was a flesh-eating demon with an excited expression. In Heidi's eyes, only utter terror remained. The creatures passed by, and she let out a relieved sigh. Oh! Elsewhere, demons were ruthlessly swinging scythes, slaughtering a group of players. One monster, having just finished feeding, still had blood on its mouth and was dragging another person, who was struggling desperately. In the end, only a pool of blood remained, and one person was hiding behind a large rock. He frowned, biting his lip, his body trembling. He remembered the words his brother had said. "Do you have anything else to say?" The man glanced out and saw the monster still lifting someone up. He activated his might wind magic, and with its power, he shot off quickly, escaping from the scene. A smile appeared on his face as he neared his destination. But suddenly, a massive furry leg rose up, and he froze, kneeling down in shock. The monster stomped its foot down hard on the ground. "I found it." The monster's face lit up with excitement, showing its sharp teeth. Terrified and motionless, he looked up at the creature's movements. As his eyes opened, he noticed a ship broken in half near the river and mountains. He recalled. The monster had grabbed him, swinging him up and down, playing and laughing loudly. Lying motionless on the ground, a large wound on his head bleeding profusely, blood at the corner of his mouth, his eyes vacant. Someone with fiery wings rushed toward him, swinging a sword. The monster was struck and knocked down. The figure raised the sword to strike again. The monster, terrified, covered its face with its hands. He stared in disbelief, gritting his teeth in pain. His vision gradually blurred, but he could still see the blood dripping from the monster, its entire body falling backward. One fell, and then two more appeared. Huan Wu stood tall firm. He stood there, with two monsters collapsed on either side. Someone was gradually transforming. A massive monster, its body entirely silver, eyes flashing brightly, roared, revealing a snake-like tongue and sharp teeth. He stood on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. Huan Wu took off, swiftly soaring into the sky. He flew forward, heading toward the island ahead. He landed on the ground, retracting his wings. Huan Wu grasped his sword and walked into the cave. The monster's red, bloodshot eyes glared at him, its face twisted in anger. Calmly, he tightened his grip on the sword, which emitted a dark magical aura. The monster, seeing his actions, sneered in disdain. It leisurely raised its hand, conjuring a purple magical orb. Huan Wu's eyes showed disgust. He appeared behind the monster and swung his sword at it. The monster gasped. "What?" Huan Wu struck down with his sword, landing a direct blow on the monster's body. Caught off guard, it couldn't react in time, spitting out a mouthful of blood, which poured down from the wound. The cannibalistic onlookers were struck with terror at the sight. He stood atop the monster's body, looking down on it with contempt. Huan Wu turned and looked at the group of people, causing them to retreat in fear. The shipbuilders, the cannibals, were not only warriors but also skilled shipwrights and sailors. The shadow of someone loomed in the darkness. Huan Wu took a step forward, and the group raised their swords in defense. The leader, sword in hand, trembled, his face filled with fear. Huan Wu stood still, his demeanor stern.